Thanks so much for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Michelle Beck. Let's get to your headlines. Happening right now at Providence Place in Minneapolis, nursing home workers beginning their 48-hour strike. We checked right before this show and management has not reached a deal with SEIU Healthcare to avoid this strike. 3 other nursing homes did reach a deal. Their workers will get pay raises and better schedules, among other changes. Developing right now in Dickeytown, a safety alert after more armed robberies in the area last night. Just before 11 yesterday, police say an armed robbery happened on 7th Street, followed by an attempted armed robbery near 9th Avenue and 8th Street. This is the second time in 2 days police have issued a safety alert in the area. The alert says a group of 3 to 4 men robbed someone on 7th Street, and they tried to rob someone else just a few blocks away. One of them had a gun, another had a knife. The suspects last night were seen in black hoodies and black masks. Well, just a day before that, suspects had similar descriptions in another safety alert. 4 men, including one armed, allegedly robbed people at 5 different locations in and around Dickeytown. This happening again early Sunday morning. Sunday's alert didn't have a vehicle mentioned, but there was one in yesterday's. Do be on the lookout for a gray BMW. It's an SUV without plates. You should call 911 if you see it. Happening at lunchtime today, the Minnesota Gophers will introduce their new men's basketball coach. These are pictures of Roseville native and U of M alum Niko Medved arriving in Minneapolis with his wife and daughters last night. Our Audrey Russo has the latest reactions to the news.
The run-up to this noon press conference has been a wild ride for Medved. He and his family got off a plane last night, captured by camera crews. And you know it's a big deal when the mascot meets you on the tarmac. They're settling into the place they'll call home for the next 6 years. Medved will be formally introduced as the 19th head coach of his alma mater's basketball team if he gets the Board of Regents approval and passes a background check. The Roseville native spent the last 7 years coaching at Colorado State. Just 2 days ago, his team competed in the NCAA tournament, missing the Sweet 16 by a single basket. A tough loss for them, but setting in motion his return home. Medved saying in a statement to KARE 11, this job was too special to pass up, and when the opportunity presented itself, I had to take it. And since we received that statement just after lunchtime yesterday, social media has been buzzing over this new chapter. Posters seem cautiously optimistic, and against the backdrop of the NCAA tournament, they're excited for the possibility of the Gophers being a part of their bracket next year. Back to you.
And tune in right at noon today for coverage of Medved's welcome right here on KARE 11+. Now to Washington and the fallout of what appears to be a major national security breach. A journalist with The Atlantic magazine says he was accidentally added to a group chat on an unclassified messaging app with top government officials. They were discussing plans for a military strike against Houthi rebels in Yemen that took place earlier this month. NBC's Alice Barr is in Washington with the latest.
Hi there. The National Security Council called the text thread deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. But critics argue the apparently unintended and undetected presence of a journalist throws that characterization into question.
The White House in damage control trying to figure out how a journalist was accidentally added to a group chat with top U.S. officials discussing sensitive military plans to bomb Iranian-backed forces in Yemen earlier this month, and why they used the unclassified commercial messaging app Signal.
These are life and death issues.
The Atlantic magazine's editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg says he was added by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and took screenshots of the messages, including from Vice President J.D. Vance, Waltz, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who sought to discredit Goldberg and downplay the discussions.
Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Goldberg disputes that, noting some details he says Hegseth shared were too sensitive to quote directly.
The specific time of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets, meant to be killed in that attack, weapon systems, minute by minute accounting of what was about to happen.
The National Security Council said the chat appears to be authentic while arguing there were no threats to our service members or our national security. 14 Senate Democrats sending President Trump a letter demanding answers. He denied any knowledge on Monday.
I don't know anything about it.
Amid outrage on Capitol Hill.
It is by the grace of God that we don't have dead pilots and failed missions.
The Republican Senate Armed Services chair saying his committee will look into it.
It's definitely a concern, and it appears that mistakes were made, no question.
As the fallout grows.
Two sources tell NBC News that President Trump met with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz later in the day yesterday, and the White House said the president has the utmost confidence in his national security team. In Washington, I'm Alice Barr. Back to you.
Developing right now, Israel's military is admitting to targeting Al Jazeera journalist Hussam Shabbat in an airstrike Monday. Shabbat was killed in Gaza. Israeli defense officials allege he was a sniper terrorist with Hamas. Israel says it uncovered Shabbat's alleged links, saying he was trained by Hamas terrorists in 2019. Meantime, Israeli settlers beat up Hamdan Bilal, one of the Palestinian co-directors of the Oscar-winning documentary film No Other Land in the occupied West Bank on Monday. This before he was detained by the Israeli military. NBC's Matt Bradley reports from Tel Aviv.
Yeah, a violent but perhaps not so shocking scene in Masafer Yatta on the West Bank last night for those who had seen the film No Other Land, which won an Oscar but didn't get distributed in the States, according to filmmakers, because of its controversial subject matter. Hamdan Bilal, who was one of the 4 directors of the film who won that Oscar, was beaten by Israeli settlers and detained by members of the Israeli Defense Forces during fighting between settlers and protesters in the same township, the same area where the documentaries had been filmed. All of this is happening as the Israelis are continuing their attacks on the Gaza Strip. Dozens of people were killed in continued fighting last night, and over the past 24 hours, we've seen more than 60 people killed, according to Palestinian health authorities in the Gaza Strip, which is ruled by Hamas. And all of this happens as a grim milestone was passed over the weekend. Now, the death toll ever since October 7th, 2023, those attacks that started the latest round of fighting, has passed 50,000 people killed. Matt Bradley, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
Happening today, Governor Walz will announce a special election to fill the District 6 Senate seat. Former Senator Justin Eichhorn served there. He resigned after being arrested for allegedly trying to solicit a minor for sex. The Republican candidates include Josh Gazelka, Doug Kern, Angel Zierden, Kerry Heintzman, and newly added former GOP Chair Jennifer Carnahan, Steve Cotiriou, and John Howe. The lone Democrat in the race right now is Emily LeClaire. The winner of the special election could be seated by mid to late April. We're also learning more about Eichhorn's wife, that she's filed for divorce from the ex-senator. According to his Senate webpage, the two have 4 children together. It comes as Bloomington police share fresh details about the sting operation where Eichhorn was arrested. Here's Lou Raguse.
I think everybody knows about Justin.
Bloomington Police Chief Booker Hodges revealed at his press conference new details about their arrest of former Republican State Senator Justin Eichhorn for allegedly trying to meet up with what he thought was a 17-year-old girl he was texting.
The decoy had told him that they lived with their aunt and that their aunt was gone till next week. And then Justin had asked if he could have sex in his car.
Because of that, Hodges put a Bloomington logo on Eichhorn's truck.
Because we're forfeiting his vehicle administratively because he wanted to come here and commit a felony.
That comes as federal prosecutors are now asking a judge to keep Eichhorn in jail until his trial, claiming he orchestrated an effort to retrieve a computer from his St. Paul apartment to deprive investigators of the opportunity to examine it. According to this court filing, someone identified as Individual A asked Eichhorn on a jail phone call about his laptop, then tried to retrieve it from his St. Paul apartment while FBI agents guarded it. The court papers say agents found the laptop in a red bag that also included an iPhone reset to factory settings, this handgun, and ammunition. Prosecutors say the gun is a problem as well because Eichhorn told the court he had no firearms in his apartment when he suggested they let him live there while awaiting trial. Back in Bloomington, Eichhorn was one of 14 men arrested in their most recent sting operation.
We had no idea who he was.
And Chief Hodges says they are still deciding how to use Eichhorn's truck.
When you forfeit vehicles, you can either sell them or you can put them in your fleet and use them, right? So, I mean, that'd be a good truck for some more of these operations or to catch speeders.
At Eichhorn's first appearance, the judge had ruled he could be released to a halfway house, but the judge put a stop to that, saying Eichhorn will stay in jail at least until a hearing this week when he can consider all these new issues. Well, over at the state capitol, lawmakers have less than 2 months to put together the next 2-year budget, but federal cuts are throwing a wrench in those efforts. We know this morning 24 programs in Minnesota are on hold or canceled, including federal grants for public safety and disaster assistance. State officials also estimate Minnesota could lose more than $1 billion per year in Medicaid funding if Congress approves a plan to trim spending in the energy and commerce space.
Choosing the wealthy few over the American people and the Minnesotan people is going to have long-reaching impacts.
If Minnesota doesn't pass a budget by May 19th, lawmakers would need to call a special session to try again in June. However, state lawmakers from both parties say there's also a chance they might need to come back in the fall, depending on what Congress passes. Do stick with us. More news and weather is coming up after the break.